In the heart of the eternal forest, where the trees hum with secrets older than time itself, a strange quiet has fallen. The ancient whispers that once danced through the air like melodies are now gone, replaced by an eerie mist that clings to the ground and muffles the world. Elara, a young Dreamweaver, wakes to find her village swallowed by this unnatural silence. The mist isn't just thick, it feels alive, watching, waiting. It's as if the forest itself has been muted, its soul stolen away in the night. But Alara knows this isn't just a fog, it's a warning. Something has disturbed the balance, something dark and unseen. With the weight of her village and the forest's eternal slumber resting on her shoulders, Elara sets out on a path few dare to tread, a journey to the dreaming grove, the sacred heart of the forest. It's a place of power, where the spirits of the land speak through dreams, and where the answers to this growing darkness may lie. But as she steps into the unknown, the mist seems to follow, whispering warnings of its own. What has stirred this ancient evil, and can Elara restore the peace before the forest's eternal slumber becomes its eternal end? The faint glow of fireflies flickers in the distance, their light soft but insistent, like tiny lanterns beckoning Elara forward. She steps cautiously, her boots brushing against moss that feels unnaturally cold beneath her feet. The air is heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic, almost sharp. The mist curls around her ankles, as if testing her resolve, but she presses on, following the firefly's golden trail. Each step takes her deeper into the forest, where the trees loom taller and the shadows seem to shift on their own. It's as if the forest itself is alive, watching her, measuring her. Then a sound breaks the silence, a soft whimper, so faint it's almost lost in the rustle of leaves. Elara pauses, her breath catching as she scans the dim underbrush. There, nestled among the roots of an ancient oak, lies a fox. Its fur is the color of twilight, and its eyes, oh, its eyes, shine with a light that reminds her of the stars on a clear winter's night. But the creature is wounded, a deep gash running along its side. Elara kneels, her heart aching at the sight. She knows this is no ordinary fox. Its presence feels too deliberate, too tied to the forest's pulse. As she tends to its wounds with herbs from her satchel, the fox lifts its head, its gaze piercing. Its voice, when it speaks, is not a sound but a sensation, a vibration that hums through her very bones. The mist, it whispers, its words carrying the weight of centuries, is not of this world. It comes from the cracks between dreams, where shadows grow restless and hungry. The dreaming grove, it is the key, but you must hurry, child. The forest's dreams are fading, and if they vanish, so too will its soul. Elara's hands tremble as she finishes binding the fox's wound. The creature's warning lingers in her mind, its urgency sharp and undeniable. The dreaming grove, a place she's only heard of in legends, where the spirits of the forest whisper their secrets to those who dare to listen. But reaching it won't be easy. The mist grows thicker with every passing moment, and the path ahead is shrouded in uncertainty. Still, she rises, her resolve hardening like tempered steel. The forest has called to her, and she will answer, no matter the cost. The fireflies glow brighter now, their light guiding her onward, deeper into the heart of the eternal forest. The The path ahead curves sharply, leading Elara to the edge of a wide, shimmering brook. The water here is unlike any she's seen before. Its surface so still, it looks more like polished glass than a flowing stream. This is the Whispering Brook, a place spoken of in hushed tones by the elders of her village. They say its waters hold the memories of the forest, carrying echoes of all that has ever been. But tonight, the brook feels different. It doesn't murmur or ripple. It lies silent, as if holding its breath. Elara steps closer, her reflection staring back at her from the water's surface. But it isn't her, not exactly. The face she sees is older, wearier, etched with lines of regret. Around it, the water begins to shift, swirling into shapes that make her chest tighten. A vision emerges, her younger self, standing in the village square, trembling as she fails to summon her dream-weaving powers in front of the elders. The memory is sharp, vivid, and it stings as though it happened yesterday. She turns away, but the water pulls her back, showing her another moment, a time when she hesitated to help a friend in need, paralyzed by her own fear of failure. The air grows colder, and the mist around her thickens, coiling like a predator, sensing weakness. Elara realizes with a jolt that this isn't just a reflection of her past, it's a test. The brook is forcing her to face the doubts she's buried deep within, the ones that whisper she's not strong enough, not brave enough, not enough. The mist seems to feed on these thoughts, growing denser, heavier, until it feels like a weight pressing down on her chest. Ahead, she spots a narrow stone bridge, its surface worn smooth by time. It looks fragile, as though it might crumble under the slightest pressure, but it's the only way across. As she steps onto the first stone, the visions intensify. Now she sees herself at the edge of the dreaming grove, unable to take the final step, unable to save the forest. The mist swirls around her, its whispers growing louder, taunting her with every fear she's ever had. Elara's breath quickens, her hands gripping the straps of her satchel tightly. She knows she can't turn back, not now, not ever. The forest is counting on her. Taking a deep breath, she forces herself to focus on the present, on the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. She reminds herself why she's here, not for glory, not for recognition, but because the forest called to her, and she answered. The visions may reflect her past, but they don't define her. With each step, the mist seems to thin, its grip on her weakening. By the time she reaches the other side, the brook's surface ripples faintly, as if acknowledging her courage. The visions fade, leaving only the soft sound of water flowing once more. Elara feels lighter, as though she's shed a burden she didn't even realize she was carrying. The mist retreats, its whispers silenced by her newfound resolve. She glances back at the brook one last time, a small, determined smile touching her lips. The forest's memories may run deep, but so does her will to protect it. And with that, she turns and continues her journey, the path ahead glowing faintly with the light of the fireflies, leading her ever closer to the dreaming grove. The forest grows denser as Elara ventures deeper, the air tinged with a faint, otherworldly glow. The trees here seem to lean inward, their branches forming a canopy so thick that even the mist struggles to penetrate. This is the Hollow Glade, a place where the forest's oldest spirits dwell. The ground beneath her feet feels softer, almost spongy, as though the earth itself is alive and breathing. Ahead, a towering tree stands apart from the others, its bark silvered with age, and its roots sprawling like ancient veins across the forest floor. This is no ordinary tree. It hums faintly, a low, resonant vibration that makes the air around it shimmer. As Elara approaches, the tree seems to shift, its trunk parting to reveal a figure made of light and shadow. The spirit's form is fluid, shifting between the shapes of a human, a stag, and a bird, its voice a blend of rustling leaves and distant thunder. "You have come far, Dreamweaver," it says, its words echoing in her mind rather than her ears. But the journey ahead is fraught with peril. The mist that chokes this forest is no mere fog. It is the breath of the Shade King, a being of darkness cast out long ago. Elara's heart pounds as the spirit's words sink in. The Shade King, a name she's only heard in the darkest of tales, whispered by elders as a warning to children. He was a creature of nightmares, banished to the void between dreams for his crimes against the forest. But now it seems he has found a way back, and his hunger for vengeance is boundless. The Dreaming Grove is his target. The spirit continues, its form flickering like a dying flame. If he corrupts it, the forest's dreams will turn to ash, and its soul will wither. You must stop him, but you cannot face him alone. The spirit extends a hand, and from its palm, 3 glowing symbols rise into the air. A leaf wreathed in flame, a shard of pale stone, and a feather that hums with a melodic resonance. These are the relics of the forest's guardians, the spirit explains. The ember leaf, born of the first fire that warmed the land. The moonstone shard, carved from the heart of the forest's oldest peak. And the echoing feather, plucked from the wings of the sky itself. Together, they hold the power to shield the Dreaming Grove from the Shade King's corruption. But each relic is hidden, guarded by trials that will test your courage, your wisdom, and your heart. Elara's mind races, 3 relics, each tied to the forest's deepest mysteries. She knows this is no simple quest. It will take everything she has and more, but the spirit's gaze holds a flicker of hope, a silent reassurance that she is not alone in this. The path will be treacherous, the spirit warns, its voice softening, but the forest believes in you. Remember, the Shade King thrives on fear and doubt. To face him, you must first master yourself. As the spirit's form begins to fade, the symbols of the relics linger in the air before dissolving into the mist. Elara feels the weight of the task ahead settle on her shoulders, but with it comes a spark of determination. She looks around the hollow glade, the ancient trees seeming to nod in silent encouragement. The fireflies reappear, their light pulsing gently, as if to remind her that she's not without guidance. With a deep breath, she steps forward, her path now clear. The relics await, and with them, the hope of saving the eternal forest from a darkness that threatens to consume it all. The air grows hotter with each step as Alara approaches the Emberwood, a place where the very ground seems to pulse with heat. The trees here are unlike any she's seen before. Their bark glows faintly, as if embers burn just beneath the surface, and their leaves flicker like tiny flames. The path ahead shimmers with waves of heat, and the wind carries a dry, crackling sound, like the distant roar of a wildfire. This is no ordinary forest. It's a living furnace, a place where fire and life intertwine in a delicate, dangerous dance. Elara presses forward, her skin prickling under the intense heat. The Emberwood is alive, its fiery energy swirling around her in gusts that sting her eyes and singe her hair. She can feel the power here, raw and untamed, and she knows the Ember Leaf is close. But the forest doesn't give up its treasures easily. As she steps deeper into the grove, the ground beneath her feet begins to shift, glowing cracks splitting open to reveal rivers of molten earth. Flaming creatures emerge from the cracks, salamanders with scales that gleam like molten gold, their eyes glowing with an ancient, predatory light. They hiss and snap at her, their movements quick and deliberate, as if testing her resolve. She moves cautiously, her heart pounding as she weaves between the fiery obstacles. The heat is almost unbearable, each breath searing her lungs, but she refuses to turn back. The Ember Leaf is her only hope, and she won't let fear or pain stop her. Ahead, she spots it, a single leaf glowing brighter than the rest, its edges flickering like the flame of a candle. It's perched atop a twisted tree, its branches reaching skyward like skeletal fingers. The moment her hand closes around the leaf, a surge of warmth floods through her, not just heat, but something deeper, like the forest itself is acknowledging her courage. But her triumph is short-lived. Shadows begin to gather at the edges of the grove, darker and more menacing than the flames around her. The Shade King's minions have found her. Their forms are indistinct, shifting and writhing like smoke, but their malice is unmistakable. They move swiftly, their whispers cutting through the crackling air, taunting her with promises of failure and despair. Elara clutches the Ember Leaf tightly, her mind racing. She can't fight them, not here, not now. The creatures close in, their shadows stretching toward her like tendrils of darkness. With no time to think, she darts through the grove, her feet barely touching the ground as she leaps over glowing fissures and ducks under flaming branches. The minions give chase, their forms weaving through the air with unnatural speed. She can feel their cold breath on her neck, their whispers growing louder, more insistent. But the Ember Leaf pulses in her hand, its warmth steady and reassuring. It's as if the forest is guiding her, showing her the way out. She follows the faint glow of the fireflies, their light cutting through the smoke and shadows, until she finally bursts out of the Emberwood and into the cool night air. Gasping for breath, Elara looks back at the grove, now silent and still. The encounter leaves her shaken, her hands trembling as she clutches the Ember Leaf. The Shade King's minions are relentless, their presence a grim reminder of the stakes. But as fear gives way to resolve, she feels a new determination burning within her. The forest has given her its first relic, and she won't let its trust be in vain. The journey ahead is perilous, but with each step, she grows stronger, more certain of her purpose. The fireflies gather around her once more, their light steady and unwavering, as if to remind her that even in the darkest moments, she is not alone. The cool, silvery light of the Moonlit Caverns greets Elara as she steps inside, a stark contrast to the fiery intensity of the Emberwood. The air here is crisp, carrying a faint scent of damp stone and something almost sweet, like the memory of a long-forgotten dream. The cavern walls shimmer faintly, reflecting the pale glow of bioluminescent moss that carpets the floor. It's a place out of time, where the boundaries between reality an illusion blur, and every step feels like walking through a waking dream. As she ventures deeper, the cavern seems to shift around her. The walls ripple like water, and the path ahead twists and turns in ways that defy logic. One moment, she's walking forward. The next, she's back where she started. Time itself feels unstable here, slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. Elara pauses, her breath steady despite the disorientation. She knows this is no ordinary maze. It's a test, one designed to challenge her perception and resolve. A soft chuckle echoes through the cavern, low and melodic, like the sound of wind through chimes. Before her, a figure materializes, translucent and shimmering with the same silvery light that fills the cavern. The spectral guardian's form shifts fluidly, its features indistinct, but its presence commanding. "Welcome, Dreamweaver," it says, its voice resonating with an ancient, ethereal quality. To claim the Moonstone Shard, you must prove your worth. Answer this riddle, and it shall be yours. The Guardian's words hang in the air, weighty and deliberate. I am not alive, yet I grow. I have no lungs, yet I need air. I have no mouth, yet I can drown. What am I? Elara's mind races, the riddle twisting and turning like the cavern itself. She closes her eyes, focusing on the rhythm of her breathing, letting the words settle in her thoughts. The answer comes to her not as a revelation, but as a quiet certainty. "Fire," she says, her voice steady despite the eeriness of the cavern. The Guardian's form shimmers, a faint smile playing across its features. "Well spoken, Dreamweaver. You have passed the test of mind, but the Moonstone Shard is more than a prize. It is a responsibility. Take it, and remember the balance it represents." With a wave of its hand, the Guardian dissipates, leaving behind a pedestal of smooth, polished stone. Atop it rests the Moonstone Shard, its surface glowing with a soft, milky light that seems to pulse in time with her heartbeat. As Elara reaches for the shard, the cavern around her shifts once more. The walls dissolve into a swirling mist, and she finds herself standing in the heart of the dreaming grove. But this is no peaceful vision. The grove is under siege, its ancient trees bent and broken, their leaves falling like ash. The mist is thicker here, darker, and at its center looms a shadowy figure, its form shifting and writhing like a living nightmare. The Shade King. His presence is overwhelming, a suffocating weight that makes the air itself feel heavy. The vision fades as quickly as it appeared, leaving Elara standing alone in the cavern, the Moonstone Shard clenched tightly in her hand. Her heart pounds, the urgency of the task ahead pressing down on her like a physical force. The forest's dreams are unraveling, and time is running out. With a deep breath, she tucks the shard safely into her satchel and turns toward the cavern's exit. The fireflies gather once more, their light steady and unwavering, as if to remind her that the path ahead, though fraught with peril, is not one she walks alone. The next relic awaits, and with it, the hope of saving the eternal forest from the darkness that threatens to consume it. The skyward cliffs rise before Elara like a wall of jagged stone, their peaks lost in the clouds above. The air here is thin and crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and the distant cries of birds. This is a place where the earth meets the sky, where the wind sings through the cracks in the rock, and the horizon stretches endlessly in every direction. The echoing feather lies somewhere at the summit, guarded by a creature of legend, a majestic eagle whose wings span the width of the cliffs themselves. Elara knows this will be no ordinary climb. The cliffs are steep, their surfaces slick with moisture, and the mist clings to the rocks like a second skin, obscuring the path ahead. As she places her hands on the cold stone, she feels the weight of the challenge settle over her. The eagle watches from above, its golden eyes gleaming with a fierce intelligence. It doesn't speak, but its presence is clear. This is a test, one that will demand every ounce of her courage and determination. The climb begins slowly, her fingers finding purchase in the cracks and crevices of the rock. Each step is deliberate, her movements careful but steady. The wind whips around her, tugging at her cloak and threatening to unbalance her, but she presses on, her focus unwavering. Halfway up, the mist begins to thicken, swirling around her like a living thing. The Shade King's voice cuts through the silence, low and mocking. "Why do you struggle, little Dreamweaver?" It whispers, its tone dripping with malice. "The forest is lost. You will fail, just as you always have." The words sting, digging into the corners of her mind where doubt still lingers. But Elara tightens her grip on the rock, her jaw set in determination. She won't let the Shade King's taunts distract her. The forest needs her, and she won't let it down. The higher she climbs, the more the cliffs seem to resist her. The rocks shift beneath her hands, their surfaces growing slicker, and the wind howls louder, threatening to tear her from the cliffside. But with each step, she feels a growing sense of resolve. She thinks of the ember leaf and the moonstone shard, the relics she's already earned through trials of fire and mine. This climb is no different. It's a test of heart, of her willingness to face her fears and push forward despite them. When she finally reaches the summit, the mist parts, revealing the eagle perched on a ledge, its feathers shimmering with an iridescent light. In its talons is the echoing feather, its delicate form glowing faintly. The eagle tilts its head, studying her with those piercing golden eyes. For a moment, there is silence, broken only by the rush of the wind. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, the eagle extends its wing, offering the feather to her. Elara takes it carefully, the softness of the feather, a stark contrast to the hardness of the stone beneath her feet. As her fingers close around it, a surge of warmth spreads through her, carrying with it a sense of lightness, as though the wind itself has lifted her spirit. The eagle lets out a low, resonant cry, its wings spreading wide as it takes to the sky, circling above her in a gesture of acknowledgement. It's not just the feather she's earned, it's the eagle's loyalty, a bond forged through her courage and determination. For a moment, she stands there, the wind tugging at her hair, and the world spread out below her in a breathtaking panorama. The Shade King's voice is silent now, its taunts drowned out by the rush of the wind and the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. She looks down at the echoing feather, its glow faint but steady, and feels a renewed sense of purpose. 2 relics are now in her possession, each a piece of the forest's soul, each a step closer to saving the dreaming grove. With a deep breath, she turns her gaze toward the horizon, where the mist still lingers, dark and foreboding. The final trial awaits, and with it, the chance to confront the Shade King himself. The eagle's cry echoes in the distance, a reminder that she is not alone in this. The forest's guardians stand with her, their strength and wisdom guiding her forward. And as she begins her descent from the cliffs, the echoing feather clutched tightly in her hand, she knows that no matter how dark the path ahead may seem, she has the light of the forest within her, and that is enough. The path to the dreaming grove winds through a forest that feels less like a sanctuary and more like a battlefield. With the ember leaf, moonstone shard, and echoing feather safely in her satchel, Elara presses forward, but the air grows heavier with each step. The once vibrant trees now twist unnaturally, their branches clawing at the sky like gnarled fingers. The mist, once a silent companion, now swirls with a malevolent energy, coiling around the trunks and distorting the forest into something unrecognizable. It's as if the Shade King's corruption has seeped into the very roots of the land, twisting its beauty into grotesque shapes that make Elara's heart ache. As she moves deeper, the silence is broken by muffled cries, voices she recognizes. Emerging from the mist, she sees figures slumped against the trees, their faces contorted in fear and pain. These are her people, villagers from her home, but they are not awake. They are trapped in nightmares, their dreams twisted by the Shade King's influence. Their bodies are motionless, but their expressions tell a story of torment, of battles fought in the mind against horrors only they can see. Elara's breath catches as she approaches the first villager, a woman she once knew for her laughter, now frozen in a silent scream. Without hesitation, Elara reaches into her satchel, her fingers brushing against the relics. The ember leaf glows faintly, its warmth steadying her as she holds it above the woman. The dream weaving comes instinctively, a skill she's honed over years, but this is different. She isn't just weaving dreams, she's unraveling nightmares. The leaf's light pierces the darkness, dissolving the shadows that cling to the woman's mind. Slowly, her features relax, and her breathing evens out. She's free, but the effort leaves Elara trembling, her energy drained as though she's fought a battle herself. One by one, she moves through the grove, using the relics to free the trapped villagers. The moonstone shard's soft glow illuminates the path, its light cutting through the mist like a beacon. The echoing feather hums with a gentle resonance, its power steadying her as she works. But with each villager she saves, the toll grows heavier. Her hands shake, her vision blurs, and the mist seems to close in tighter, as if feeding on her exhaustion. The Shade King's presence looms closer, his whispers growing louder, more insistent. "You cannot save them all," he taunts, his voice a low rumble that vibrates through the ground beneath her feet. "The forest is mine." Elara grits her teeth, forcing herself to focus. She won't let him win, not now, not when she's so close. The final villager, a young boy, lies curled at the base of a twisted tree, his face pale and tears streaked. As she kneels beside him, the relics in her hands flicker, their light dimming under the strain. She presses on, weaving the boy's nightmare into something softer, something kinder. When he wakes, his eyes wide with relief, she feels a flicker of triumph, but it's short-lived. The effort leaves her gasping, her strength all but spent. The mist thickens, the shadows deepening as the Shade King's presence grows stronger. In the distance, the dreaming grove shimmers faintly, its ancient trees still standing tall despite the corruption around them. But between her and the grove stands a wall of darkness, the Shade King's power, manifesting as a swirling vortex of shadow and malice. Elara knows she can't face him like this, not weakened and alone. Her body screams for rest, but her spirit refuses to yield. The relics hum softly in her satchel, their combined light a small but steady reminder of what's at stake. She's come too far to turn back now. With a deep breath, she rises unsteadily to her feet, her gaze fixed on the grove. The forest's whispers, once faint and distant, now grow louder, urging her forward. They are not just whispers of fear, they are whispers of hope, of a strength she didn't know she had. The relics may be her tools, but the forest's soul is her guide. And as she takes her first step toward the grove, the mist parts ever so slightly, as if the forest itself is making way for her. The Shade King's laughter echoes behind her, but she doesn't look back. The final battle is near, and she will face it with the fire of the ember leaf, the wisdom of the moonstone shard, and the courage of the echoing feather. The forest's dreams depend on her, and she will not let them fade. The dreaming grove is unlike anything Elara has ever seen. As she steps into the clearing, the oppressive mist falls away, replaced by a soft, golden light that seems to emanate from the very air itself. The trees here are ancient, their trunks spiraling upward like pillars of living wood, their leaves shimmering with a faint, ethereal glow. The ground is carpeted in moss so vibrant, it feels like walking on clouds, and the air hums with a gentle, melodic resonance, as though the grove itself is singing. This is the heart of the eternal forest, a place untouched by time, where the spirits of the land speak through dreams. But even here, the Shade King's corruption lingers, a faint, Inkai stain marring the grove's perfection. Elara moves to the center of the clearing, where a stone altar stands, its surface etched with runes that pulse faintly with the same golden light. She knows what she must do. Placing the ember leaf, moonstone shard, and echoing feather on the altar, she begins the ritual. The relics glow brighter as she chants, their light intertwining to form a protective barrier around the grove. The air grows warmer, the hum of the grove rising to a crescendo, and for a moment, it feels as though the forest is holding its breath, waiting for the balance to be restored. But then, the light flickers, a cold, oppressive darkness seeps into the clearing, and the air grows heavy with the scent of decay. The Shade King's laughter echoes through the grove, low and mocking, as his shadowy form materializes before her. He is a figure of pure darkness, his features shifting and writhing like smoke, his eyes glowing with a cold, malevolent light. His presence is overwhelming, a suffocating weight that makes the golden light of the grove dim and falter. "You've come far, little Dreamweaver," he says, his voice a deep, resonant growl that seems to vibrate through the ground. "But why struggle? Why fight for a forest that will never truly accept you? You've always been an outsider, haven't you? Even now, you doubt yourself." His words cut deep, dredging up insecurities she thought she'd buried. Memories flash before her eyes, moments of failure, of doubt, of standing on the edges of her village, never quite belonging. The Shade King's whispers coil around her, feeding on her fears, amplifying them until they feel unbearable. He extends a shadowy hand, his voice softening, almost coaxing. "Join me, and I will give you power beyond your wildest dreams. No more weakness, no more fear. You could be more than a Dreamweaver. You could be a queen." All you must do is let go. His offer is tempting, a siren's call that promises an end to her struggles, to the relentless weight of responsibility. For a moment, she hesitates, the weight of his words pressing down on her. But then she looks down at the relics, their light flickering but still steady. She thinks of the fox in the forest, the spirit in the hollow glade, the eagle on the cliffs, each one a reminder of the forest's trust in her. She thinks of the villagers she saved, their faces softening as she freed them from their nightmares, and she thinks of the grove itself, its golden light fading under the Shade King's shadow, but still fighting, still holding on. No, she says, her voice trembling but resolute. The forest is worth fighting for. I won't abandon it. Her words are met with a deafening silence, the Shade King's form shifting, his eyes narrowing with cold fury. The grove's light dims further, the golden glow now a faint flicker, as though her refusal has weakened its defenses. The Shade King's form grows larger, his shadow stretching across the clearing, swallowing the light. Elara's resolve wavers, her strength faltering under the weight of his presence. She feels the grove's pain as if it were her own, a deep, aching loss that threatens to overwhelm her. But even as the darkness closes in, she clings to the faint glow of the relics, their light a fragile but steady reminder of what's at stake. The battle is far from over, and though the Shade King's power is vast, she knows the forest's soul is stronger. And with that thought, she steels herself, ready to face whatever comes next. The Shade King's laughter fades into a low, guttural growl as the grove grows colder, the golden light flickering like a dying flame. His shadowy form shifts, and with a wave of his hand, the air around him fractures, spilling forth a horde of shadowy creatures. They pour into the clearing like a living storm, their forms writhing and shapeless, their eyes glowing with a cold, predatory light. Elara's breath catches, her grip tightening on the relics as she steps back, her mind racing. The ember leaf pulses in her hand, its warmth a small comfort against the encroaching darkness. The first creature lunges, its form shifting into a jagged, clawed shape. Elara reacts instinctively, raising the ember leaf like a shield. A burst of fiery light erupts from the relic, searing the shadow and sending it recoiling with a piercing shriek. But more creatures surge forward, their numbers overwhelming. She swings the moonstone shard in a wide arc, its pale light cutting through the darkness like a blade, dissolving the shadows on contact. The echoing feather hums in her satchel, its resonance steadying her as she moves, but the effort of wielding the relics takes its toll. Each strike drains her, her movements growing slower, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The shadows press closer, their whispers cutting through the chaos, taunting her with visions of failure. She sees herself falling, the relics slipping from her grasp, the grove swallowed by darkness. Her strength wanes, her body trembling under the weight of the battle. Just as she feels her resolve falter, a familiar warmth brushes against her leg. She looks down to see the fox from the forest, its twilight-colored fur glowing faintly. Its eyes meet hers, and for a moment, the chaos around them stills. "You are not alone," it says, its voice a quiet hum that resonates through her very bones. Before she can respond, the tree spirit from the hollow glade materializes beside her, its form shimmering with a silvery light. "The forest stands with you," it says, its voice a blend of rustling leaves and distant thunder. Above, a shadow blots out the sky as the eagle from the cliffs descends, its wings spreading wide, their iridescent glow cutting through the darkness. The three guardians take their places around her, their light intertwining with the relics to form a radiant barrier that pushes back the shadows. The battle intensifies, the guardians and Elara working in unison to drive back the Shade King's minions. The fox weaves through the shadows, its form a blur of light and motion, dissolving the creatures with a touch. The tree spirit raises its hands, and the ground beneath the shadows erupts in vines of pure light, ensnaring and banishing them. The eagle soars above, its wings beating with a force that scatters the darkness like leaves in a storm. Elara fights alongside them, the relic's power amplified by the guardian's presence, her strength renewed by their unity. For a moment, it seems the tide has turned. The shadows thin, their numbers dwindling under the relentless assault. But the Shade King remains, his form towering over the grove, his eyes blazing with fury. "You think this changes anything?" he snarls, his voice shaking the very air. The forest's light is fading, its dreams are mine to claim. With a gesture, he summons a wave of darkness, so vast it blots out the sky, crashing toward them like a tidal wave. The guardians brace themselves, their light flaring brighter as they join their power with Elara's. Together, they meet the wave head-on, the relic's light cutting through the darkness like a beacon. The collision is deafening, the force of it sending shockwaves through the grove. For a moment, the world seems to hold its breath, the light and darkness locked in a fierce struggle. Then, with a final blinding burst, the darkness is driven back, the Shade King's form flickering like a dying flame. "This is not over," he growls, his voice fading as his form dissolves into the shadows. "The forest will fall, and you with it." His laughter echoes through the grove as he retreats, the remnants of his minions scattering like smoke. The guardians' light dims, their forms flickering as they turn to Elara. "You have bought us time," the tree spirit says, its voice weary but resolute. "But the Shade King will return. The forest's dreams are still in peril." Elara nods, her body trembling with exhaustion, but her spirit unbroken. She looks at the relics, their light steady but faint, and feels a renewed sense of purpose. The battle is far from over, but for the first time, she feels the weight of the forest's hope, resting not just on her shoulders, but on the strength of those who stand with her. The fox brushes against her leg once more, its presence a quiet reassurance, while the eagle circles above, its cry a reminder of the courage that brought her this far. Together, they will face whatever comes next. The grove's golden light swells, growing brighter with each passing moment as Alara completes the ritual. The relic's ember leaf, moonstone shard, and echoing feather pulse in unison, their combined energy weaving a tapestry of light that spreads outward, dissolving the mist and pushing back the shadows. The air itself seems to sigh in relief, the oppressive weight of the Shade King's presence lifting as the grove's song grows louder, more vibrant. The ancient trees stand tall once more, their leaves shimmering with renewed life, and the moss beneath her feet feels warm, alive, as though the earth itself is rejoicing. Elara steps back from the altar, her body trembling with exhaustion, but her spirit alight with triumph. Around her, the forest stirs. The villagers, once trapped in nightmares, begin to awaken, their eyes fluttering open as the last traces of the mist fade. They look around, dazed but unharmed, their faces softening as they realize they're free. The whispers of the forest return, gentle and reassuring, a chorus of gratitude that seems to wrap around her like a warm embrace. For the first time, in what feels like an eternity, the eternal forest breathes freely again. But even as the grove's light restores its beauty, Elara feels a faint, lingering chill in the air. The Shade King's laughter echoes faintly in the distance, a haunting reminder that his defeat is not absolute. His shadow may have been driven back, but his presence lingers, a subtle undercurrent of darkness that refuses to dissipate entirely. Elara's gaze hardens as she looks toward the horizon, where the mist still clings to the edges of the forest like a scar. She knows this is not the end. The Shade King will return, his hunger for the forest's dreams undiminished. The fox brushes against her leg, its twilight fur glowing faintly, while the eagle circles above, its cry a solemn reminder of the vigilance required to protect the grove. The tree spirit appears beside her, its form shimmering with a quiet strength. "You have done well, Dreamweaver," it says, its voice a blend of rustling leaves and distant thunder. But the forest's dreams will always need guardians. The Shade King's defeat today is but a reprieve, not a final victory. Elara nods, her resolve hardening like tempered steel. She looks down at the relics in her hands, their light steady but no longer blazing. They are tools, not solutions, and their power will need to be honed, protected, and understood if she is to stand against the Shade King's inevitable return. The forest's whispers grow softer, their gratitude mingling with a quiet urgency. They trust her, but they also warn her. The battle ahead will be longer, harder, and the cost may be greater than she can imagine. As the villagers begin to gather, their voices murmuring with relief and confusion, Elara steps forward, her presence commanding their attention. "The forest is safe for now," she says, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. But the darkness has not been banished entirely. We must remain vigilant. The Shade King will return, and when he does, we must be ready. Her words hang in the air, a sobering reminder of the fragile peace they've achieved. The villagers exchange uneasy glances, but there is no fear in their eyes, only determination. They've seen what the forest can endure, and they know the strength it takes to protect it. Around them, the grove's light softens, casting a warm, golden glow over the clearing. The forest's song grows quieter, a lullaby of reassurance, but Elara knows it is also a call to action. The Shade King may have been driven back, but his shadow still looms, a silent threat waiting in the wings. With a final glance at the relics, now resting peacefully on the altar, Elara turns her gaze toward the horizon. The forest's dreams are safe, for now, but the road ahead is long, and the battle for the eternal forest soul is far from over. The fox, the eagle, and the tree spirit stand beside her, their presence a quiet reminder that she is not alone in this fight. Together, they will face whatever comes next, their light a beacon against the darkness. And as the first rays of dawn break through the trees, Elara takes a deep breath, her spirit steady and her resolve unshakable. The forest's dreams are hers to protect, and she will not falter. As Elara steps back into her village, the air feels different, lighter, warmer, as though the forest itself is exhaling in relief. The villagers gather around her, their faces alight with gratitude and awe. Cheers and murmurs of "hero" ripple through the crowd, but the word feels heavy on her shoulders. She smiles, accepting their thanks, but inside, she knows the truth. The Shade King may have been pushed back, but the battle is far from over. The forest's dreams are safe for now, but they will always need protection. And that responsibility, that weight rests firmly on her. In the days that follow, Elara begins to notice subtle changes. The villagers look to her not just for protection, but for guidance. They see her not only as a hero, but as a teacher, someone who can help them understand the forest's ways. At first, the thought is daunting. Dreamweaving has always been a rare gift, one that few possess. But as she watches the villagers, their curiosity, their determination, she realizes that the forest's future depends on more than just her. It needs guardians, dreamers, and protectors. And so, she begins to teach. Gathering a small group of willing villagers, Elara starts with the basics. She shows them how to listen to the forest's whispers, how to feel the pulse of its dreams beneath their feet. It's slow work, and not everyone succeeds at first. But as the days turn into weeks, she begins to see progress. A young girl learns to calm a restless tree with a gentle touch. A boy discovers how to weave a dream of safety for a frightened animal. Each small victory fills Elara with pride, but also a quiet hope. The forest is no longer relying on just one Dreamweaver. It's building an army of protectors. Amidst her teaching, the fox remains by her side, its presence a constant source of comfort. It follows her through the village, its twilight-colored fur catching the sunlight, and watches her with eyes that seem to hold the wisdom of the forest itself. Their bond grows stronger, deeper, as though they've become extensions of each other. The fox is more than a companion now. It's a symbol of her connection to the forest's soul, a reminder of the responsibilities she carries and the strength she draws from the land. One evening, as the sun dips below the horizon and the village settles into a peaceful quiet, Elara sits by the fire with the fox curled at her feet. She gazes into the flames, her thoughts drifting to the Shade King and the darkness that still lingers at the edges of the forest. The fox stirs, its ears twitching as though it senses her unease. "We'll face him again," she murmurs, more to herself than to the fox. "But this time, we'll be ready." The fox looks up at her, its golden eyes steady and unwavering, as if to say, "You are not alone." The days continue, and Elara's training grows more intense. She teaches her students not just how to weave dreams, but how to face their fears, how to find strength in unity. The villagers begin to see themselves not just as individuals, but as part of something greater, a community bound by the forest's soul, and as their confidence grows, so does Elara's. She begins to feel a flicker of hope, a belief that even if the Shade King returns, the forest will stand strong. Yet, despite the progress, there are moments when the weight of her responsibility feels almost unbearable. Late at night, when the village is asleep and the forest's whispers grow faint, Elara finds herself staring at the relics, the ember leaf, the moonstone shard, the echoing feather. Their light a quiet reminder of the battles fought, and those still to come. She wonders if she's done enough, if she's truly prepared them for what lies ahead. But then she hears a soft rustle, and the fox appears at her side, its presence a steadying force. It nudges her hand gently, as if to say, "You are enough." As the weeks turn into months, the village transforms. The once fearful villagers now move with purpose, their connection to the forest deepening with each passing day. Elara watches them with a quiet pride, knowing that the forest's future is in good hands, but she also knows that the journey is far from over. The Shade King's shadow still lingers, a silent threat waiting in the wings. And when he returns, as he surely will, the forest will need more than just a hero. It will need a legacy. With the fox at her side and the relics close at hand, Alara feels a renewed sense of determination. The forest's dreams are hers to protect, but they are also hers to nurture, to pass on to those who will carry the torch after her. And as she looks out over the village, the first rays of dawn breaking through the trees, she knows that she is ready, not just to fight, but to lead. The forest's soul is strong, and so is hers. Together, they will face whatever comes next. One night, as the village sleeps under the soft glow of the moon, Elara drifts into a dream unlike any she's ever known. It begins as a faint whisper, a tug at the edges of her mind, pulling her into a place that feels both familiar and alien. The forest fades away, replaced by a barren, desolate landscape, a realm of jagged cliffs, ashen skies, and rivers that flow with a thick, tar-like substance. The air is heavy, suffused with a silence so profound it feels like a weight pressing against her chest. This is no ordinary dream. It's a vision, sharp and vivid, and it carries a truth she cannot ignore. In the distance, a towering structure rises from the wasteland, its spires twisting like the bones of some long-forgotten beast, the Shade King's prison. The sight of it sends a chill through her, not just from its imposing presence, but from the realization that strikes her like a thunderclap. He was never truly defeated. The battle in the Dreaming Grove had only delayed him, pushing him back into this forsaken realm. And now, from the depths of his prison, he waits, his power growing, his hunger for the forest's dreams undiminished. The dream shifts, revealing a hidden path, a narrow, winding trail that snakes through the cliffs and valleys of this desolate world. It's faint, almost imperceptible, as though the land itself is trying to hide it. But Elara knows this is no accident. The forest has shown her this path for a reason. It's a call, a plea, and a warning all at once. To end the Shade King's threat for good, she must venture into this forsaken place and face him where his power is strongest. The thought sends a shiver down her spine, but there's no hesitation in her heart. She cannot ignore this. The forest's dreams and its future depend on her. When she wakes, the dream lingers, its image is etched into her mind like scars. The morning light filters through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground, but the warmth of the sun feels distant, almost unreal. She sits up, her breath steady but her thoughts racing. The relics, the ember leaf, the moonstone shard, and the echoing feather rest beside her, their light dim but steady. They've been her allies, her tools, but now they feel like more than that. They're a promise, a reminder of the strength she's drawn from the forest, and the strength she'll need to face what lies ahead. The fox stirs at her side, its golden eyes meeting hers with a quiet intensity. It doesn't speak, but its gaze carries a message she understands all too well. The journey to the Shade King's prison will be unlike anything she's faced before. The path is fraught with dangers she can't yet imagine, and the stakes are higher than ever. But as she looks into the fox's eyes, she feels a flicker of resolve, She's not alone. The forest's guardians, the fox, the eagle, the tree spirit, stand with her. And so do the villagers, their growing connection to the forest, a testament to the strength they've found together. Rising to her feet, Elara steps outside, the cool morning air brushing against her skin. The village is beginning to stir, the sounds of life filling the air, but her mind is already elsewhere. She knows what she must do. The path to the Shade King's prison is treacherous, but it's a journey she cannot avoid. The forest's dreams are too precious, too vital, to leave unprotected. And so, with the relics in hand and the fox at her side, she begins to prepare. The road ahead is uncertain, but one thing is clear. The time has come to end the Shade King's threat, once and for all. The forest's soul depends on it, and so does hers. The journey begins under a sky, heavy with clouds, the air thick with an unnatural stillness. Elara stands at the edge of the village, her satchel weighed down by the relics, and her heart heavy with the gravity of what lies ahead. Beside her are the Dreamweavers she's trained, men and women who once doubted their abilities, but now stand ready to face the unknown. Their faces are a mix of determination and apprehension, their eyes reflecting the flickering light of the torches they carry. This is no ordinary quest. They are stepping into a realm where the rules of the forest no longer apply, where shadows hold sway and nightmares take shape. The path to the Vale of Shadows is marked by a trail of faint, glowing stones, their light dim but steady, like the last embers of a dying fire. As they walk, the forest around them grows sparse, the trees thinning into twisted, skeletal forms that seem to reach for them with gnarled branches. The air grows colder, the silence deeper, until even the sound of their footsteps feels muffled, as though the land itself is resisting their presence. Elara leads the way, her gaze fixed ahead, her hand resting on the hilt of her staff. She knows this is only the beginning. The Vale of Shadows is unlike anything they've ever seen. The moment they cross its threshold, the world shifts. The ground beneath their feet becomes unstable, shifting like sand, and the sky above is a swirling mass of dark clouds, shot through with streaks of lightning that never quite touch the ground. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and the faint whispers that once guided them now twist into eerie, disjointed murmurs. The Dreamweavers exchange uneasy glances, their confidence wavering as the reality of their mission sinks in. This is a place where nightmares are born, where every shadow holds a memory or a fear waiting to be unleashed. The first test comes swiftly. A low, guttural growl echoes through the air, and from the darkness emerges a creature of pure shadow, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. Its eyes glow with a cold, predatory light, and its presence sends a wave of dread through the group. One of the Dreamweavers, a young man named Kale, freezes, his face pale with fear. It's my worst nightmare," he whispers, his voice trembling. The creature lunges, its claws outstretched, but Elara steps forward, her staff glowing with the light of the moonstone shard. With a swift, decisive motion, she strikes the creature, and it dissolves into nothingness, its form scattering like ash in the wind. But the victory is short-lived. The encounter leaves the group shaken, their resolve tested. Kale's hands tremble as he clutches his staff, his gaze fixed on the ground. What if we're not strong enough for this? He mutters, his voice barely audible, The others nod in silent agreement, their doubts mirroring his. Elara turns to face them, her expression calm but firm. Fear is natural, she says, her voice steady, but it doesn't define us. The Shade King thrives on doubt, on the belief that we're not enough, but we are. Together, we're stronger than any nightmare he can conjure. Her words seem to steady them, their faces softening as they absorb her message, but the veil of shadows is relentless. As they press on, the land around them shifts, the path twisting and turning in ways that defy logic. One moment, they're walking through a barren wasteland. The next, they're surrounded by towering cliffs that seem to close in around them. The air grows heavier, the whispers louder, until it feels as though the very land is trying to break them. The Dreamweavers struggle to keep their focus, their fears manifesting in ways that test their resolve. At one point, they find themselves in a cavern filled with mirrors, each one reflecting not their faces, but their deepest insecurities. A young woman named Elara stares into one, her reflection showing her as a child, standing alone in the village square, her dream-weaving powers failing as the elders watch in disappointment. Tears well in her eyes, but Elara steps forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The past doesn't define you," she says softly. "What matters is what you choose to do now." Elara nods, her tears drying as she straightens, her resolve hardening. The group presses on, their bond growing stronger with each trial they overcome. But the veil of shadows is not done with them. As they near the heart of the realm, the path ahead is blocked by a chasm, so vast it seems to stretch into infinity. Below, shadows writhe and twist like a living thing, their whispers growing into a deafening roar. The Dreamweavers hesitate, their confidence faltering once more. But Elara steps forward, her gaze fixed on the other side. "We've come too far to turn back now," she says, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "Together, we can cross this." With the relics in hand, she begins to weave a bridge of light. Its surface, shimmering with the combined power of the ember leaf, moonstone shard, and echoing feather. The Dreamweavers follow, their steps steady despite the chasm below. As they reach the other side, the veil of shadows seems to shudder, its hold on them weakening. But Elara knows this is only the beginning. The Shade King's prison lies ahead, and the true test of their strength is yet to come. With the Dreamweavers at her side and the relics in hand, she takes a deep breath, her resolve unshakable. The journey is far from over, but they are ready to face whatever comes next. The fortress looms ahead, its jagged spires piercing the ashen sky like broken teeth. The moat surrounding it is a void of blackened water, still and lifeless, reflecting nothing but the oppressive gloom above. The air here is heavy, thick with a despair that clings to the skin and seeps into the bones. Each step feels like wading through tar, the weight of the Shade King's presence pressing down on them. Elara pauses, her breath visible in the cold air, and glances back at her Dreamweavers. Their faces are pale but resolute, their hands gripping their staves tightly. This is it, the heart of the darkness they've come to confront. The fortress itself seems alive, its stone walls shifting and groaning as though they're breathing. Shadows writhe across its surface, forming faces that twist and snarl before dissolving back into nothingness. The entrance is a gaping maw, its edges jagged like a wound torn into the fabric of the realm. As they step inside, the air grows colder, the whispers of the Shade King's influence curling around them like smoke. The corridors are a labyrinth, twisting and turning in ways that defy logic, the walls closing in and shifting behind them as they move. It's as if the fortress is testing them, trying to break their resolve before they even reach its master. Elara leads the way, her footsteps steady despite the unease settling in her chest. The relics in her satchel hum faintly, their light a small but steady comfort in the suffocating darkness. But as they venture deeper, the Shade King's power grows stronger. The whispers become louder, more insistent, dredging up fears and doubts that had long been buried. One by one, the Dreamweavers begin to falter. Kale freezes, his eyes wide with terror as shadows coil around him, pulling him into a side passage. Elara stumbles, her staff slipping from her grasp as she's swallowed by the darkness. Elara calls out to them, but her voice is swallowed by the fortress's oppressive silence. She's alone now, the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her like a stone. The fortress seems to close in around her, its corridors narrowing until she's forced to move forward single file. The air grows heavier, the whispers now a cacophony of voices that echo in her mind. They taunt her with memories of failure, of moments when she doubted herself, when she felt like an outsider in her own village. "You'll never be enough," they hiss, their voices cold and mocking. "The forest will fall, and it will be your fault." Elara clenches her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she forces herself to focus. She can't let the Shade King's whispers break her. Not now, not when she's so close. Finally, she reaches the heart of the fortress, a vast, cavernous chamber, filled with a swirling vortex of shadows. At its center stands the Shade King, his form towering and indistinct, his eyes glowing with a cold, malevolent light. He turns to her, his voice a low, resonant growl that seems to vibrate through the very air. "You've come far, little Dreamweaver," he says, his tone dripping with mockery. "But you are too late. The forest's dreams are mine to claim, and you are powerless to stop me." Elara steps forward, her staff glowing with the combined light of the relics. "The forest's dreams don't belong to you," she says, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "And I won't let you take them." The Shade King laughs, the sound echoing through the chamber like thunder. "Brave words," he sneers, "but bravery means nothing in the face of despair." With a wave of his hand, the shadows surge forward, forming into grotesque shapes that lunge at her with claws outstretched. Elara reacts instinctively, her staff cutting through the shadows with a burst of light. The relics' power flares, their glow intensifying as she channels their energy. But the Shade King's influence is overwhelming, his darkness relentless. Each shadow she destroys is replaced by another, their numbers endless. The air grows colder, the weight of his power pressing down on her until it feels like the chamber itself is closing in. Her breath comes in ragged gasps, her movements growing slower as exhaustion sets in. The Shade King watches from the shadows, his laughter echoing in her ears. But even as her strength wanes, Elara's resolve doesn't falter. She thinks of the fox, the eagle, the tree spirit, the guardians who stand with her. She thinks of the villagers, their faces softening as she freed them from their nightmares. And she thinks of the forest, its golden light flickering but still fighting, still holding on. The relics in her hands pulse faintly, their light a fragile but steady reminder of what she's fighting for. The Shade King may be powerful, but the forest's soul is stronger, and as long as she carries that light within her, she won't give up. With a deep breath, Elara steps forward, her staff blazing with light. The Shade King's laughter fades, his form flickering as the relic's power grows. The battle is far from over, but for the first time, she feels a flicker of hope. The forest's dreams are hers to protect, and she will fight for them no matter the cost. The chamber is vast, its walls pulsating with shadows that seem to breathe in time with the Shade King's voice. Elara stands at the center, her staff clutched tightly in hand, its light flickering against the oppressive darkness. The Shade King looms before her, his form shifting and writhing, a mass of shadows that seems to stretch endlessly in every direction. His eyes, cold, piercing, and filled with malice, bore into hers as he speaks, his voice a low, resonant growl that reverberates through the air. "You've come this far, only to fail," he sneers, his words dripping with mockery. "Do you truly believe your feeble light can stand against the endless night?" As he speaks, the shadows around her twist and swirl, forming into shapes that make her chest tighten. Visions flash before her eyes, moments of failure, of doubt, of standing on the edges of her village, never quite belonging. She sees herself trembling before the elders, her dream-weaving powers faltering under their scrutiny. She sees the villagers trapped in nightmares, their faces contorted with fear as the mist closes in. The Shade King's laughter echoes in her ears, cold and unrelenting. "You are nothing," he says, his voice a venomous whisper. "The forest will fall, and it will be your fault." Elara's breath quickens, her heart pounding as the weight of his words presses down on her. For a moment, she feels the doubt creeping in, the fear that she isn't strong enough, that she's just as powerless as he claims. But then, a faint warmth brushes against her skin. She looks down at the relics in her satchel, the ember leaf, the moonstone shard, and the echoing feather. Their light, though dim, pulses steadily, a quiet reminder of the forest's hope, of the strength she's drawn from its soul. She clenches her fists, her jaw tightening as she forces herself to focus. "The forest's dreams don't belong to you," she says, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "And I won't let you take them." The Shade King's laughter grows louder, the shadows around him surging forward like a tidal wave. Elara raises her staff, the relic's light flaring as she channels their power. The air crackles with energy, the clash of light and darkness, illuminating the chamber in bursts of gold and black. Shadows lunge at her, their forms twisting into grotesque shapes, but each time, she strikes them down with a burst of light from the relics. The ember leaf burns with a fiery glow, the moonstone shard hums with a resonant power, and the echoing feather pulses with a melodic rhythm, their combined strength cutting through the darkness. But the Shade King is relentless. His shadows reform faster than she can destroy them, their numbers endless, their forms growing more menacing with each passing moment. The air grows colder, the weight of his power pressing down on her until it feels like the chamber itself is closing in. Her movements grow slower, her breath coming in ragged gasps as exhaustion sets in. The Shade King watches from the shadows, his laughter echoing in her ears. "You cannot win," he says, his voice a low, taunting growl. The darkness will consume you, just as it has consumed everything else. Elara's vision blurs, her strength waning as the shadows close in. But then, a faint whisper brushes against her mind, a single, quiet word that cuts through the chaos. Believe it's not her voice, nor the Shade King's. It's the forest's, its soul reaching out to her, its light a fragile but steady reminder of what she's fighting for. She thinks of the fox, its golden eyes steady and unwavering. She thinks of the eagle, its cry a call to courage. She thinks of the tree spirit, its light a beacon in the darkness. And she thinks of the villagers, their faces softening as she freed them from their nightmares. The forest's dreams are hers to protect, and she won't let them fade. With a deep breath, Elara channels the Relics' power, their light flaring brighter than ever before. The ember leaf burns with a fierce intensity, its flames cutting through the shadows like a blade. The moonstone shard hums with a resonant power, its light dissolving the darkness around her. The echoing feather pulses with a melodic rhythm, its resonance steadying her as she steps forward. The Shade King's laughter falters, his form flickering as the relic's light strikes at his core. For the first time, she sees a crack in his armor, a flicker of uncertainty in his glowing eyes. Elara doesn't hesitate. She strikes again, her staff blazing with light as she channels the relic's combined power. The Shade King reels, his form flickering and writhing as the shadows around him begin to dissolve. The chamber shudders, its walls groaning as the fortress's hold weakens. The air grows lighter, the oppressive weight of the darkness lifting as the relic's light spreads through the chamber. The Shade King's form flickers once more, his voice a low, guttural growl. This is not over, he snarls, his words fading as his form dissolves into the shadows. The darkness will return. As the last of the shadows fade, the chamber falls silent, the relic's light steady but faint. Elara's breath comes in ragged gasps, her body trembling with exhaustion, but her spirit unbroken. The fortress around her groans, its walls shifting and crumbling as the Shade King's power weakens. She knows this is not the end. His threat lingers, a silent reminder of the battles still to come. But for now, the forest's dreams are safe, their light a beacon of hope against the darkness. With the relics in hand and the forest's soul within her, Elara steps forward, her resolve unshakable. The journey is far from over, but she is ready to face whatever comes next. The fortress trembles violently, its walls groaning as cracks spread like spider webs across the stone. Dust and debris rain down from above, filling the air with a choking haze. Elara stands in the heart of the chaos, her staff glowing with the combined light of the relics, her gaze locked on the Shade King. His form flickers, shadows writhing around him as he struggles to maintain his hold on the crumbling realm. The chamber around them seems to pulse, the very fabric of the fortress unraveling as the relic's power destabilizes its foundations. You think this changes anything? The Shade King snarls, his voice a guttural growl that reverberates through the collapsing walls. The darkness will always return. You cannot destroy me. His form surges forward, shadows lashing out like tendrils, but Elara meets him head on. The ember leaf flares in her hand, its fiery light cutting through the darkness, while the moonstone shard hums with a resonant power that shakes the air. The echoing feather pulses in time with her heartbeat, its melody steadying her as she channels their combined strength. The clash is deafening, light and darkness colliding in bursts of gold and black that illuminate the crumbling chamber. Each strike sends shockwaves through the fortress, the walls buckling under the strain. Elara's arms ache, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but she doesn't falter. The Relics' light is her anchor, their power a beacon in the suffocating darkness. Yet even as she fights, she knows this battle cannot be won by force alone. The Shade King's power is too vast, his connection to the darkness too deep. To end this, she must make a sacrifice. With a steadying breath, she raises the moonstone shard, its pale light flickering faintly. The relic hums in her hand, its power resonating with the fortress's crumbling structure. She knows what she must do. Channeling the moonstone's energy, she thrusts it into the ground, its light erupting in a brilliant pulse that spreads through the chamber. The fortress shudders, its walls groaning as the relic's power seals the Shade King within a barrier of pure light. His form writhes, shadows clawing at the barrier, but the moonstone's light holds firm. "You cannot contain me," he roars, his voice echoing through the collapsing chamber. The darkness will rise again. Elara doesn't respond. Her heart aches as the moonstone shatters, its light dimming as the barrier solidifies. The relic's sacrifice is the price of victory, but the cost weighs heavily on her. She turns, her movements swift as the fortress begins to collapse around her. The path to the exit is treacherous, the floor crumbling beneath her feet, but she presses on, her companions' voices guiding her through the chaos. Kale and Ellara are waiting at the edge of the fortress, their faces pale with fear, but their hands steady as they help her across the final stretch. The ground beneath them cracks, the chasm below swallowing the fortress as it collapses into the abyss. Together, they leap across the widening gap, the air around them thick with dust and debris. The sound of the fortress's collapse echoes behind them, a deafening roar that shakes the very ground. As they reach the safety of the Veil of Shadows, Elara turns back, her chest heaving as she watches the fortress crumble. The Shade King's laughter echoes faintly, a haunting reminder that his defeat is not absolute. But for now, the forest's dreams are safe. The relic's light still burns within her, their power a testament to the strength she's drawn from the forest's soul. Kale places a hand on her shoulder, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "We did it," he says, his words a quiet reassurance. "The forest is safe because of you." Elara nods, but the weight of the moonstone's sacrifice lingers. The journey has cost them much, but it has also forged bonds stronger than any shadow. As they begin the long trek back to the village, the air around them grows lighter, the whispers of the forest returning, soft and reassuring. The path ahead is uncertain, but for now, they have won. And in the light of that victory, Elara finds the strength to keep moving forward. As Elara and her companions step back into the eternal forest, the air feels lighter, alive with the hum of life, returning to its roots. The villagers rush forward, their faces alight with joy and relief, their cheers echoing through the trees like a symphony of gratitude. Children dart between the adults, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves, while the elders stand tall, their eyes glistening with pride. The forest itself seems to shimmer, its golden light brighter than ever, as though it's rejoicing in their return. For a moment, it's easy to forget the battles fought and the sacrifices made. But Elara feels the weight of it all, a quiet ache that lingers beneath the surface of her smile. The celebration lasts well into the night, the village square alive with music, dancing, and the warm glow of lanterns. Tables overflow with food and drink, the villagers sharing stories of their own struggles during the forest's darkness, their voices filled with awe as they recount Elara's journey. She sits at the center of it all, her companions by her side, but her mind wanders. The relics, what's left of them, sit heavy in her satchel. The moonstone shard is gone, its light extinguished in the final battle, and the ember leaf and echoing feather feel different now, their glow softer, as though they too bear the scars of what they've endured. She knows the Shade King's defeat came at a cost, one that can't be undone. As the festivities wind down, Elara slips away, drawn to the heart of the forest. The dreaming grove greets her with a quiet reverence, its ancient trees standing tall, their leaves shimmering faintly in the moonlight. She kneels at the altar, her fingers brushing against the cool stone, and closes her eyes. The forest's whispers surround her, gentle and reassuring, but there's a new note to them now, a quiet urgency, a reminder that the balance they've restored is fragile. The Shade King may be gone, but darkness is never truly vanquished. It lingers, waiting for the moment to rise again. Her thoughts drift to the journey, the fox who guided her, the eagle who tested her courage, the tree spirit who shared its wisdom. Each step, each trial, had been a lesson, not just in strength, but in humility. She realizes now that the forest's eternal slumber isn't just a state of being. It's a delicate dance, a balance that must be nurtured and protected. It's not enough to fight the darkness when it rises. She must ensure the forest's dreams remain strong enough to withstand it. The villagers may see her as a hero, but Elara knows the truth. She's a guardian, a Dreamweaver, and her work is far from over. The relics may have been her tools, but the real power lies in the connections she's forged with the forest, with its guardians, and with the people who call it home. As she rises to her feet, the grove's light softens, its song a quiet lullaby that seems to say, "You are enough." When she returns to the village, the fire has burned low, and the square is quiet. The fox waits for her at the edge of the trees, its golden eyes reflecting the faint glow of the ember leaf in her satchel. It doesn't speak, but its presence is a comfort, a reminder that she's not alone in this. The forest's dreams are safe for now, but the journey to protect them is eternal. And as the first light of dawn breaks through the trees, Elara feels a quiet resolve settle in her heart. The balance is fragile, but it's worth fighting for, and she'll be ready, no matter what comes next. The twilight settles over the dreaming grove, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet. Elara stands at the edge of the clearing, her gaze fixed on the fireflies that flicker like tiny stars against the darkening horizon. Their light weaves patterns in the air, a dance of resilience and hope that mirrors the journey she's just completed. The forest's whispers are soft now, a gentle hum that carries the warmth of gratitude. But beneath the tranquility, there's a quiet undercurrent, a reminder that peace, like the forest's dreams, is a delicate thing, always needing care. The fox sits at her feet, its twilight-colored fur catching the last rays of the setting sun. Its golden eyes meet hers, steady and knowing, as if it understands the weight of her thoughts. The Shade King may be gone, his fortress crumbled into the abyss, but the forest's balance remains fragile. Shadows, after all, are never truly gone. They linger in the corners, in the spaces between dreams, waiting for the moment to rise again. Elara knows this. She feels it in the way the relics hum faintly in her satchel, their light softer now but still unwavering. The ember leaf and echoing feather are more than tools. They're symbols of the responsibility she carries. Her journey has changed her. The trials she faced, the sacrifices she made, have shaped her into more than a Dreamweaver. She's a guardian now, a keeper of the forest's soul. The villagers may see her as a hero, but she knows the truth. This is not the end. The forest's dreams are eternal, and so is the need to protect them. She looks down at the fox, its presence a quiet reassurance. "We're not done, are we?" she murmurs, her voice barely above a whisper. The fox tilts its head, its gaze steady, as if to say, the journey never truly ends. In the distance, the dreaming grove shimmers faintly, its ancient trees standing tall and proud. The golden light that once flickered under the Shade King's shadow now glows with a steady radiance, a testament to the balance they've restored. But Elara knows this balance must be nurtured. The forest's dreams are not just its own, they belong to everyone who calls it home. The villagers, the guardians, even the smallest creatures that flit through the underbrush, all play a part in keeping the light alive. It's a collective effort, one that requires vigilance and unity. As the last light of day fades, Elara takes a deep breath, the cool evening air filling her lungs. She feels a quiet resolve stirring within her, a determination to continue the work she's begun. The Shade King's defeat was a victory, but it was also a lesson. Darkness, like light, is a part of the forest's eternal cycle. It cannot be eradicated, only held at bay, and that's where her role lies, not just as a Dreamweaver, but as a guide, a teacher, someone who can help others understand the delicate dance between light and shadow. The fireflies gather around her, their light pulsing gently, as if to remind her that she's not alone. The fox brushes against her leg, its presence a steadying force. Together, they face the darkness and emerge stronger. And as she looks to the horizon, where the first stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, she feels a sense of purpose settle over her. The forest's dreams are hers to protect, but they're also hers to share. The journey ahead is uncertain, but it's one she's ready to face, not just for herself, but for everyone who calls the eternal forest home. With a final glance at the grove, Elara turns and begins to walk back toward the village. The path is familiar now, but it feels different, as though the forest itself is guiding her forward. The whispers grow softer, their tone warm and encouraging. The fox follows at her side, its steps silent but sure, and as the first notes of the forest's evening song rise into the air, Elara feels a quiet peace settle over her. The road ahead is long, but it's one she'll walk with courage and hope, knowing that the light she carries will always shine, no matter how dark the night may seem.